Good morning. Glad to see all of you out this morning and worship for God in spirit and in truth. Continuing our series of lessons on the fruits of the Spirit, which our next one is kindness. And before we get into the lesson, let's go to God in prayer. Dear Father, hallowed be thy gracious and holy name. As we come before thy throne, as we go into the study this morning, we ask that we take the things that are said this morning, apply them to our lives if they're scriptural and if they're necessary for us to apply. And if we are lacking these things, be with us and keep us safe. And in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Next, as I mentioned, next in our fruits of the Spirit is kindness. This particular one has been a interesting one for me to study. And not only in studying, but also in just a lot of things come to mind when thinking of kindness. There are numerous directions in which we can take this sermon. Numerous directions in which we can go in as far as how we look at kindness. But one thing stuck in my mind, and it got stuck in my mind way before I even got to this particular fruit of the Spirit. And it all started years ago, back in 2009. I'm sure you'll recognize the person on the screen. I do. I better anyway. But my gorgeous wife, Chris. Like as many of you know, we met in elementary school, and we didn't go to the same middle school. We did go to the same high school for a couple years. We lost touch for a number of years, and then after graduation from high school and after my pathetic attempt at my first semester at college, me and Chrissy got back in touch with each other. And we talked, and we decided to meet up and asking her how things were going. And I will say that I was not expecting to hear what she told me. She told me things have been rocky. Things have been not as good as what I was expecting. I'm paraphrasing here because the actual conversation is a little shaky in my head. But I remember one thing she told me, and she said there was a period of time that me and my mom was homeless and did not have anywhere to go. And she said that we're not homeless no more, but it was a very rough time in my life. And me as being back then, I kind of had my perceptions a bit about how it was to be homeless or how you get in that predicament. And I tell you what, after talking with my wife, I felt so ashamed of myself. Felt so ashamed of myself to even think that how dare I think that way. And I'll tell you what, it's so sad. She told me about how her and her mom had got kicked out of where they were living at, and how that they had to live in their car for a number of times, for a pretty long time. And her mom still worked. But just because you work doesn't mean you can afford a place to live. And numerous shelters would not take both of them. They had so many restrictions, which that was eye-opener for me. I didn't realize shelters had so many restrictions on who could not stay. And some are only female only, some are male only, some are co-op, but they got so many restrictions and all these things. And she said that there would be times when the manager would give them on one night in a hotel, and she said that was one of the best showers she's ever had because she never knew how much hot water was a convenience to us today. And how much just having the ability to take a shower was a convenience for us today. She told me of so much of how people lived on the streets. And I felt so ashamed of myself when she sat here and she told me things that I never knew. Things that made me say, wow. here I am, thinking this person is doing A, B, and C, and in fact, it may not be that way at all. How many times you walk down the street? Actually, I'll tell you what I would think before I met Chris. Which, coming from the Atlanta area, is not an uncommon thing to see. You'll be in downtown somewhere. You see an individual there that's homeless. And I pity them. And I start to go over, may want to get food or money, and then I see a brown paper bag there, which a lot of us know that alcohol is involved. And I immediately think to myself, you know what? This individual's alcoholic. You know, if I give him money, he's going to go get more alcohol. He's a wino, and I'm sure a number of us thought that. And I'm sure that individual there on the street thought that too. But what you don't know is the reason why that person has alcohol, because one, it's cheaper than food. Two, it takes away the hunger pains, which I didn't realize how bad hunger pains could be until Chrissy explained to me. She said alcohol doesn't need refrigeration, which they never had to go to that route, but they've talked, well, if they're being homeless, they talked with other people and how to survive on the street and talk about how it eases the pain of the hunger and it lets them get through the day. You go to the next person you see on the street and you think to yourself, well, if this person got a job, you know, it wouldn't be in this predicament. And now, don't be wrong, there are individuals who don't, I'm not trying to say there are those that are gaming the system, we know that. But Chrissy was shocked to find out how many people actually had jobs, but were still homeless. How many people who weren't, but they had nowhere to go. And that was the thing that shocked me when I found out from Chrissy, because that was one of the first questions I asked. It's like, did your mom work? It's like, yeah, she worked. But we had to live in the car. You know, we would have friends who would let us sleep in their driveway. I was like, what kind of friends is that? And you go to the next individual, you'll think, well, if this person, you know, and you see them as like, this person just make an effort. You know, they would get going and get things on the roll. And what we don't realize is, unfortunately, when it comes to getting a job, first appearance is everything. So if they can't afford clothes, how then can they get a job? If they can't get a job, then how can they then lift themselves up? And we complain about them, but yet the cycle continues. Now, please understand, I know there are bad apples. I'm not saying that there is, that everyone falls in one of these categories. But when I talked with Chrissy and when I learned of these things, I sat there thinking to myself, wow. This individual is suffering. And all I'm doing is kicking him even worse. Not physically, but mentally. And I'm not saying that at times that caution needs to be exercised and judgment might need to be used. But how often do we forget about those who are not on the same level as us? I don't remember who said this quote, but I remember this quote saying that a true test of your character is not how you treat those who are equal to you, but those who are beneath you. And those which we consider beneath us in our society. I'd like to look at our first passage this morning in Matthew chapter 25. Matthew 25, and I'd like to read verses 31 through 46. Lengthy reading, but I strongly believe it is worth it. But when the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate them from one another, as the shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will put the sheep on his right and the goats on the left. Then the king will say to those on his right, come you who are blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. Naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty, or gave you something to drink? And when did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or naked, and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and come to you? The king will answer and say to them, truly I say to you, to the extent that you did it to one of these brethren of mine, even the least of them, you did it to me. Then he will also say to those on his left, depart from me, accursed ones, into the eternal fire which has been prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. Naked, and you did not clothe me. Sick and in prison, and you did not visit me. Then they themselves will answer, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not take care of you? And he will answer them, truly I say to you, to the extent that you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me. These will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. You ever wonder what that word least there means? In the original, that word least means insignificant. Did it among the insignificant among you. Who do we consider the insignificant in our society? In which I would dare to say probably the individuals that we so often think of no higher than trash. Think no higher than we don't have, and like I said, I'm not saying that, there are some individuals who do not fall into the category of trying to get out of things and and being put there and their own consequences. But at times, we forget we do these things even to the least among us. Again, as I mentioned, a true test is one character. It's how you treat those who are equal to you, but those who are beneath you. It's so sad. The reason I went this route in this lesson, there are so many times that my wife wanted to tell her story, but then she'll stop because she'll hear another Christian have a stereotype about how all homeless are like. She'll stop because she'll hear it and she'll be like, if I tell them, will they look at me differently? Matter of fact, she was nervous for me to even tell this story this morning. But I told her, please let me mention it. We have to, this is something that we need to address with Christians and fellow Christians, and them to understand that we are at times not doing a good job. As I mentioned, a lot of these things I mentioned were thoughts that I had for years. And then when coming across her and realizing this, I was like, wow, these are human beings. They need the gospel as much as the next person does. And they need, from time to time, our compassion and kindness. Turn me to Luke chapter 10. Luke chapter 10, looking at verses 30 to 37. We looked at this passage a number of weeks ago while in this series, but it's worth mentioning again. Luke 10, 30 to 37. Jesus replied and said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among robbers, and they stripped him and beat him and went away, leaving him half dead. And by chance a priest was going down on that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. Likewise, a Levite also, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan who was on a journey came upon him, and when he saw him, he felt compassion and came to him and bandaged up his wounds, pouring oil and wine on them. And he put him on his own beast and brought him to an inn and took care of him. On the next day he took out two denarii and gave them to the innkeeper and said, take care of him, and whatever more you spend, when I return, I will repay you. Which of these three do you think proved to be a neighbor to the man who fell into the robber's hands? And he said, the one who showed mercy toward him. Then Jesus said to him, go and do the same. I would like to ask, what would have happened if that Samaritan had the attitude I had before I was enlightened by my wife? This individual, what is he doing down here? He's got himself in a mess. Know what? I'm not even going to try to help. It's not worth it. And we talked a little bit about the Levite and the priest, and that road was known as a dangerous road, and they might not themselves want it to be harmed. But the idea is still someone had compassion for him. And do you think that individual would remember that Samaritan? I think he'll remember that Samaritan. And I'm sure another thing too, he'll remember that priest and Levite that walked past him as well. And that is something that just, that I looked at this passage and I think about those that we consider the least in our society. And I think to myself, how often do we just blow them off? They need the gospel of Christ as well. They need our compassion and our kindness as well. And that is so sad to me. My wife is frightened to tell her story. And the thing that kills me is when she does tell it, and when I say tell it, I'm talking about among fellow Christians. When she does tell it, they automatically make assumptions of how her and her mom became homeless. Don't even want to know how they got homeless in the first place. And it's like, it wasn't because of all these stereotypes. They got kicked out of where they were living at for reasons that were unrelated to finances and things of this nature. And her mom continued to work. She did everything she could to try to get both of them, and try to take care of her as best as she could. She gave up a lot to make sure Chrissy had what she needed. And that's why I respect my mother-in-law so much. Because of the sacrifices that she was willing to make sure that her daughter was taken care of. But yet people assume that, well, they had a drug problem, that's why they were restraining. It's like, no. Well, what's that have to do with anything? People, that's the one thing about living in Atlanta. I've gotten time to talk with people who are homeless, and a lot of times, some of these people, 3, 4, 5 months ago, were working, making more money than I could ever imagine. And they're in this predicament. And that's another thing too. People say, well, person gets a job. Well, that's pretty easy for someone to say. Because if they do get a job, they still have that mentality. They still have that street mindset. And that's the thing. We expect people to get out and do what they need to do. But then, when they repeat the cycle, no one's there to offer support. Now, again, I stress, am I saying everybody falls into this category? No. And I'm not saying that, we throw caution, judgment out the window from time to time. But what I'm trying to say is, next time you see the insignificant among you, do not forget that they too have a soul. And I know there's some people that will try to take advantage. You help them out and they are constantly coming to you, and in which we understand that we have to break those cycles or try to in some way to help them, get into another place and so forth. But I always wondered to myself, what if that person we pass by, what if they were a fellow member of the church? We may not know them from our congregation, but what if they were a fellow member of the church and they feel that the church has abandoned them, that members have abandoned them? There's no good people left more, which we do see that from time to time, people assisting and helping. And we understand that there's so much we can do and so much that we have to be cautious on. But at the same time, though, I encourage all of us to show compassion to everyone you come across. Now, if you show compassion and that person is indicated to you that he's not deserving of that, then hands are washed. Your hands are clean. But what if we treated everyone as if they were a soul just as important as ours? The next person you see on the street might be a great deacon one day, might be a great elder one day, might be one of the best workers that we might have ever had, but yet no one has spoken to him. Brother Mosier, he given us an example. This was an instructor from school. He would go into this certain neighborhood that no one else in the congregation would go to. And remember going to this one person's yard. Well, what happened earlier that day, he had been knocking on all of these people's doors, these neighbors in which looked like they made a lot of money. And all had rejected or did not want anything to do with the gospel. He finally went to another neighborhood that was not so rich, and the yard was a mess. The house was run down. But he came to this individual, and he found such a willing and wanting heart. And baptizing him and his family, and now he is to this day still a deacon at the congregation that he preached at. We do not know when we'll find Christians, or those who will be acceptable to the gospel of Christ, and we need to at times show compassion. Don't forget Matthew 25, that word least means insignificant, shown to the insignificant among you. This was a lesson that was hard for me to preach because knowing my wife's background and fearful of what people might say to her, but you know what I said to myself? I don't care what people will say, because people need to understand that compassion is what Scripture teaches. And if we are to be Christians, well, we need to follow every attribute a Christian should have. If you're here this morning, if you need another reason to why you should show compassion to others, don't forget someone showed compassion to us first. Jesus Christ dying on that cruel cross of Calvary. Christ who came to live among us, who came to die on the cruel cross of Calvary, sacrificing himself for us. He did not have to do this. God did not have to send away for us. God could have destroyed us right then and there before Christ was on before he was on the cross. But what was done? What was done was compassion, mercy, and grace was shown to us. Let us do the same to our fellow man. And let us do the same, and not only do the same to our fellow man, but if you have not put on Christ in baptism, if you're a penitent believer willing to confess that Christ is the Son of God, being baptized for the remission of sins, being arisen anew, and being faithful to the word and to the commandments of Christ. Now, I will say this, and I will say this for each congregation. Each congregation needs to make sure they have balance in what they do. Because too often I'll see congregations that will adhere to preaching sound doctrine, but won't practice it. Then I'll know of congregations that will do everything in the world for people, but they abandon the doctrine. We need to make sure that we are balanced and that we show compassion, but we also still adhere to the Word of God. If you have a need this morning, please come us together. We stand as we sing.
There's a great day coming, a great